Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond Binary, the interviews.
The purpose of this podcast is to tackle controversial topics head on, try and listen, learn, and understand. Sunlight is said to be disinfectant, and today we're shedding some light on some pretty obnoxious views. Wish us luck, it's going to be interesting. From Cordoba, I'm Finn.
From London, I'm Chris.
From Amsterdam, it's Marijn.
So, have you guys had any feedback on the vegan episode so far?
We've had reviews, right?
Yeah.
I haven't read the reviews because I don't have access to iTunes.
We've had some reviews, yeah. How many, Chris?
Drum roll, not enough. So
I think we're
Not
close.
enough.
I think
Isn't
we're
it
close.
nine?
8
Isn't
reviews,
it 9?
which means Chris lives to eat meat for another month. Yay!
So for anyone who didn't hear the last episode, Chris undertook a challenge, which is for every 10 reviews, he's going to do a 22-day vegan challenge. So we just need 2 reviews on iTunes.
As I anticipated, the vegans couldn't muster the energy. So
I just think I think they don't want to force you, Chris. Because it's not supposed to be something that forces on someone else. I think you need to do it from your
that's why the
your
carnists
internal
keep winning. The vegans
conviction.
are too nice. So.
I'm going to give a quick shout out to my brother, Jens, who left us a nice review. His feedback for the episode was that it was interesting to hear the debate in a more relaxed and level-headed way. And he really enjoyed the emphasis on the psychology rather than the typical kind of vegan carnist debate. So cheers, Jens, for the feedback and the review.
Yeah, some people thought I was a bit outnumbered, but to be fair,
Yeah.
I have welcomed anyone that, had a strong opinion that felt the carnist view wasn't being represented fairly to reach out. So, and I still do. I still encourage anyone who felt that I didn't make enough points in our favour. Guys, bring it.
Did anyone get in touch about that?
I think there's, some of the traditional arguments you've heard that it's like culture and it's tradition and it's not fair to ask people to change. The other one is that, if everyone stopped eating meat, then there would be loads of plants, and growing plants kills animal too. But obviously the logical fallacy there is that it takes a lot more food to feed animals than it does to directly feed people. So it's actually a complete logical fallacy to think that eating less meat would still kill as many animals. Clearly it wouldn't.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good fallacy spot there.
There you go. All right, should we get on with this week then? So, guys, do you know what topic really gets me out of my comfort zone?
Yeah.
Do you want to know what really makes me furious? This week we're separating the wrong from the right.
This is hilarious.
I really don't know how to introduce you, so why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and who you are, and then we'll get into your politics.
All right. I'm a poker player or ex-poker player. I met Christopher in Bangkok where I was hanging out and playing poker. Before that, went to business school, studied economics, major in marketing. I'm a patriot. I guess you could call me a ethno-nationalist. And what else? Proud boy, of course. Those would be some things that you are interested in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's a proud boy?
It's like Western chauvinist fraternity. West is the best. Venerate the housewife, glorify the entrepreneur. Basically the right-wing Republican Western lifestyle. I think comes from America. More of a fun thing.
Are you Christian religious as well?
No, atheist, which is very normal in Europe and Finland.
So it's republicanism without the Christianism.
Yeah, well, I mean, Proud Boys is from America, so of course religion is much bigger over there, so it's quite normal to be a Christian over there. And here it's pretty normal to be an atheist. You would agree, I guess?
I would agree that's normal here in Europe to be an atheist, yeah.
So no fairy tale thing for me. Yeah, but anyway, I'm not a militant atheist, at least not anymore. I think Christianity is a part of Western culture and our history, and I don't think it should be shunned as much as it is here in Europe.
If you look at Geert Wilders here in the Netherlands, who's also let's say, nationalist patriotist, he very much defends the Judeo-Christian roots of Dutch civilization. He finds that very important to maintain.
Exactly. So
there's of course a lot of anti-Islamism.
So traditionalism, I'm getting into traditional values, that kind of stuff. So even if you don't believe in the Christian God and everything, it's still shouldn't be just. We shouldn't just think that all of that is gone and let's just go with a vacuum. But none of it is important in some way.
And it's interesting because, Meringue just made a comparison with Geert Wilders, but it also reflects a lot of what we were saying in the first episode on religion, right? That we, even if we're not necessarily strongly religious, we respect Christians' rights and viewpoints, and they're an important part of culture.
Oh, and we are also, so even if we are all atheists, we still influence very much about those values. Like Finland would be a Lutheran country, even though most people are in effect atheists or agnostics, they would call themselves. The Lutheran values are very much present everywhere. So even if you are an atheist in Finland, you're still very much influenced by Lutheran Christianity.
I would agree. I know it's a very unpopular opinion with some of the more militant atheists who think that Christianity is predominantly a negative impact on society and causes slavery and justifies sexism and all that sort of thing.
Right. I always think of this like this, that it takes mimetic space. Religion takes some space, and when you just get rid of it, something else will fill that void. Well, what we have this religion of multiculturalism and all that stuff. I think it's because people need to, like, in a religious way, believe in something. So
well, they're all stories. But everything is a story. So is capitalism. So is nationalism.
Right. So
it's all a story.
But that's
whatever story you want to tell yourself. But for you, it seems nationalism is almost sacred.
That's more of something that's considered sacred, and not just like what seems like a better idea. I think I think it's a great way to preserve our lifestyle. Well, I guess we're going to the whole globalism against nationalism kind of thing.
I think it plays a part,
so,
maybe.
Especially
if you.
Well, I think race and tribe and tradition, those are. Why are they important? That's a good question. There's maybe something sacred about that to me. Yeah, but the nation as such is not that important. It's a good tool, but I'm sure one of you will point out that those are man-made social constructs and whatever nations that is, while something like tribe and tribe is not a construct. It's a
But tribes is something that is long in our past, right? For most of us.
No. I don't think it is like that at all. Tribalism is doing very well.
Could you name a Western example then?
I can name that if you go to jail, if you go to jail, you have to figure out if you're white or black or Hispanic. That's one place where you will find it.
Okay, but is jail a good example of how to run a society?
No, but it's an example of when things are extreme, when
in a very
so
extreme circumstance.
The more when things
man-made
go sour, then you start to look at family members, friends, countrymen. Then you start to look at just the different spheres of your.
Well,
private.
not actually not necessarily, because if you look at the last few big disasters, we haven't necessarily looked at friends, family, but the international community has been.
So what disasters?
So the lost Sulawesi.
But those
Sri
are
Lanka,
not. Those are natural disasters. Those are like.
Well, even on a smaller scale, right? We pay taxes. Chris mentioned this in the basic income episode, that during the economic breakdown, there was enough relief fund to keep the people that were on the more dangerous part of society, right? To the economically.
I don't think a natural disaster qualifies unless.
But we have systems in place where
kind of
we can aid people that are not necessarily connected
other
to
things,
us, right? This is
come.
also the democratic welfare society.
Right. But
we're not just connected to the people in our own village anymore, right? This is something that certainly was part of our past.
I'm thinking who are the closest people to you? It's when things are nice and cozy, and even if there's there's a natural disaster, all the supply lines are working and world is connected. Everything is fine. I'm thinking, who are the closest to you? And those would be your family, then your friends, then your countrymen. At some point, it will be Englishmen or Dutchmen, then Europeans, then the whole world. And
well, friends and family could be in this modern society not necessarily from your own cultural background, right? We've become much more connected due to airplanes, due to mass communication.
I mean,
devices.
I'm about to marry an Asian, and then my children will be of mixed race.
Yeah, so that will be your family. You talk about your wife and your future kids, so obviously that's
sure. But because of that sort of thing happening more and more, it gets harder and harder for me. So I understood logically a lot of what you just said, right? You have circles of people you care about. The jump that you made where I didn't follow you was, and then you care about people in your country, and then you more than you care about Europeans. I don't, Sam. Everyone on this talk, right, is from a different country, and that hasn't made me like them less or more.
Yeah, but
it hasn't influenced my opinion.
We are so close. We are so close to each other in this
not necessarily
in the connected world. A Finn, a Dutchman, and an Englishman. We are.
But Chris is dating an Asian.
We are very similar.
And my partner is from Brazil.
Well, good for you. I lived in Thailand for 10 years too.
So then there's a multicultural reality to society nowadays, right? We are not segregated anymore. We are not tribes that live far apart anymore, that do not connect with each other anymore.
Oh, but this tribalism is coming to... okay, well, you asked for a modern European example. I will give it this example of any city, probably the cities that you live in. You got your Muslim communities, and you got your... all the people hang out with the people who are similar to them. You got this part of town, this part of
not only
people are living in same cities, but in
it gets complicated.
This is a problem they're trying to fix, though. Here, I don't know about
and people prefer it like that. I prefer to hang out with other Europeans. And the Nigerians want to hang out with other Nigerians, and the Muslims.
My reality has been different.
That's the normal. That's the whatever tribalism.
I've seen a lot different as well. I've seen multiculturalism work. I've had friends that.
Oh, where have you seen it?
In my own reality, in my own private life.
In your own private life, but how about? Okay, it's nice that you have a nice private life, but how about? Have you seen a country where it works well?
Yeah, the Netherlands works well enough.
Oh, works well enough. Is it? We're talking about the Netherlands, where your what's the nice politician who got murdered by the Muslims, right? That same
so sometimes things happen. By the way, the politician wasn't murdered by a immigrant or someone not with Dutch ethnic roots. He was murdered by a left-wing activist. And there was a filmmaker. There was a filmmaker indeed murdered by someone that tried to make an Islamic statement. And we also have different violence here in the Netherlands, right? We also have violence from other groups of people, and is there an issue here with violence from certain ethnic groups? Yeah, we have a lot of drugs criminality in Amsterdam with groups of migrants. But usually these comes from socioeconomic reasons, right?
Oh, does it? That's always what people say. Terrorism comes from people being poor.
Well, there's a lot of scientific research into socioeconomic reasoning and backgrounds to certain societies.
Right, but it doesn't. First of all, with terrorism, apparently it doesn't go like that. The poverty is what drives it. Otherwise, we would have.
No, terrorism is usually different. It's more ideologically.
All right, but anyway, how does it help that it's a socioeconomic problem? Blah, blah. How does it help for the guy who gets beat up, or the girl who gets raped? How does it help that? Oh, yeah, well, he was socially economically not doing so well.
Because socioeconomic issues can be solved by policy changes. For example, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when you're talking about migration, I would go as far to agree with you that you cannot let the entire world live in Europe. So there's going to be a point where you have to...
You guys let too many people in
where you
already.
have to... Well, no, I think Holland can still fit in there.
Well, it's your country, but unfortunately, there are people who agree with me, and maybe it will not become a Islamic country by the end of the century. With this rate, you are going to be. So, well done.
I don't think we're going to be an Islamic country.
Well, if you keep on doing what you're doing, you will.
I think there's a lot of initiative to have people integrate in modern Western culture. They're trying to they're trying to build the urban areas in such a way that you have a mix of people, mix of socio-economic classes. Right?
Let me ask you this: why do you need this problem in the first place? Why do you import a problem and then try to figure out solutions? Just stop taking those migrants from Africa, Middle East, Muslim migrants.
Because where are you ever gonna draw the line? Because that also means that Chris cannot take his partner here, and I cannot take my partner here, right? Or is Brazil okay and Thailand is okay, but certain countries are not okay?
May I answer your question? You have the process of immigration. You have interviews to say, okay, is this person economically good for the country? Is he culturally okay? Blah blah. So all right, this guy gets checked. You can come in. This guy, no, you cannot come in. You are a nuisance to the country.
They already have those checks and balances.
Bringing anything good there.
But that already happens.
Yeah,
there's a long and difficult process of getting someone to migrate here, and a series of interviews.
But apparently, it doesn't work for this. I don't know. Everybody calls themselves asylum seeker nowadays, so I guess they never.
But this is the problem I have is with apparently, because apparently it depends which type of newspapers you're reading, and if you read right-wing newspapers, it highlights all the times it doesn't work and all the negative examples. And if you read left-wing newspapers,
so you are saying you have a system. Okay, so that's probably for the legal immigrants, like I don't know me. Although European Union is there now, so I don't know. I guess I can just come in. But let's say somebody from America, so he has to go through all this process, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Application, showing bank statements, showing.
Or you just come from Somalia and say, I'm a refugee, blah blah. And
actually, you can't because you're already stopped in Turkey, which we have agreements for. Then, if you even make it out of Turkey onto a Greek island, you're stuck on the Greek island, and it's not really humanely conditions on the Greek islands right now.
Come on,
because we're not letting them in.
That's ridiculous. Hungary, we just had 30,000 young men walk in from Sweden to Finland.
30,000 is nothing.
Well,
it's nothing. And studies have also shown that a lot of migrants are very much willing to contribute to the economic sustainability of the country.
Right?
What you need is you need to give these people a chance, give these people some language courses, and allow them to integrate. There's plenty of research that plenty of these Syrians have plenty of IQ, well-educated doctors are coming here as well. So here's the thing: if you already say these people have no chance, and I'm not giving them a chance, then they'll never have a chance, right? But you can also see what can we do with these people? How can we make this something that is the more humane situation for everyone? Okay, I won't say how Finland needs to do their business. Yeah, you have made a remark about how Holland needs to do its business. And I think historically as well, what you cannot forget is the fact that Holland was a colonial power. And what we did colonially in the world, we did not have to do as well, but we did choose to do it because the European Union feels a responsibility as well. Actually, if you're part of the European Union, you give up the right to choose your own. You're part of the trade union, and the European borders are determined by the European trade union. That's what you see with Brexit, is that they cannot be allowed to make their own trade borders because the European Union decides what the European Union trade borders are. It's they're both connected, right? The movement of people and the movement of goods. So it's all about Islam then.
Yeah.
If we get to the core of the point, it's about Islam.
I'm pretty sure they don't want any Senegalese, their choice.
Why would you not want Senegalese Christians?
It doesn't matter why. It's not your business or my business to tell other countries and other peoples who to take into their homes, right?
If there's a refugee crisis in the world, then...
But in either case, right or wrong, it's their choice, not yours.
Well, the European Union chooses in the end.
And I honestly, Sam, can I just say, I think Brexit will keep happening in other countries in the EU as long as the EU keeps conflating trade and migration.
It will definitely keep happening when people...
It depends though, doesn't it? I mean, if Brexit goes terribly wrong and is awful for the UK and the EU, it could be a good example of why it might be better to have an agreement like the EU.
It's like staying with your husband who beats you up. Maybe it's even worse outside.
It really depends how it's worse, right? Like,
yeah, you are right. It might actually be better to stay with abusive
if you're gonna like live and be hungry and be beaten up every single day, like outside of that situation, you can say, well, maybe it's better. I mean, I'm not.
I want to ask you guys
what my opinion is. Really.
Do you seriously think that Poland is worse off for not taking Muslim?
I think every country should be free to decide how it controls its own borders.
But do you think it's a bad decision for Poland? Like, do you think Poland will be a crappier country because they're not letting Muslims?
Okay, I think I can answer that better if you allow me to add a bit of nuance. Okay, I think that you accept someone if they meet certain criteria and if they do certain things. So if someone joins a country, I think they should be willing and able to contribute towards the economy and work towards getting better at that. I've seen certain countries, I believe Scandinavia, they used to do it. They'd give like a 1-year visa and for temporary work. If you found a job, there's lots of companies that need people to do that, right? And then as long as you had no problems, no criminal record, you'd been working hard, then you could get that visa renewed. If you'd caused any problems, sorry, you're not welcome anymore.
Well, that sounds much better than what we've got going on now. So, right? So
for me, like if you want to attract a certain type of people, and you shouldn't just be an open door. Like you let people that add value to the economy. That's what it's about.
Yeah, it's not only about the economy. But yeah, anyway, so how about answer to the question? Do you think Poland is better off or worse off for not taking
I can't tell
Muslims?
What kind of... I don't know what kind of workers Poland needs.
You know what I answer.
Like in Germany, in Germany,
you all know that
in Germany there's a shortage of people to work in the car manufacturing plants. They need people.
Let me counter that by asking: is Holland better or worse off having Polish workers here?
Polish are different than the Muslims.
That's not true. They're all human beings.
Oh, no human beings. Right. Okay, so why don't we just open all borders and sing kumbaya? They're all human beings.
Sam.
People didn't really like the Polish people here, eh?
So I don't really know if you're better off or worse off with Polish. You guys decide. You're definitely worse off with Muslims.
So in the 1920s, people from Poland were looked at very differently to how they are now. And now we think of them as very intelligent and they're software developers, and we think of them as white like us. But back in the 1920s America, they were poor, they were uneducated, and they were viewed as less than human. They were viewed as a different ethnic group because of the socioeconomic status they came from, the lack of educational abilities. So this just goes to show that how you're looking at refugees from war-torn countries, you're saying it's race. That's how people used to look at Eastern Europeans, but who now you call your countrymen, and they're the same, and they're the same race, right? And it just shows that for me, it's really easy to confuse race. And you talk about Western Europe, but I mean, like, is Germany Western Europe? Is that a different race or the same race? Like, we're just counting the countries that win as team us.
This is all sounds very, very nice, but it's very easy. You just look at the people, what they do, and see if they're good for you or not, right? So maybe the Polish back in the days were not.
So then nationalism or ethnicity shouldn't matter. If you look at people, individuals, then ethnicity should matter. Nationalism shouldn't matter. You know, what matters to me is a person. How are you as a person?
Fine, in
right?
Individual,
the religion doesn't necessarily matter. The label doesn't matter.
On a country level, you
how do you act?
You have to make some decisions. Otherwise, right, you have to decide that these people can come in, these people cannot come in, right?
Yeah, so we look at the contextual situations of people.
Yes, okay, we can look at the individual, but I can tell you that there will be very few individuals from Somalia who we can say that.
How do you know? Did you do research? Do you know? Have you been there?
I didn't have to come to Somalia. Somalia came to me.
How can you say this? You're drawing a line over an entire group of people. You're accusing an entire group of people based on a lack of information, which is what I could do about Finnish people as well.
By the way, you say lack of information. So do you know what's the percentage of Somalians in Finland who are working? I will tell you, it's about 10.
There's other reasons to that other than the fact that they're from Senegal.
Now let's talk about the Somalis now.
There are more factors at play here, more variables at play. Have you been able to deduce that this is the specific variable that determines why they're unemployed? I don't think so. I don't think you have the research. I don't think you have the proof.
I'm not sure. I think this is an underbelly feeling. With the Somalis, but with the Senegalese. But I can tell you the Somalians are 10% of them are working, and those people are translators who are translating at court, and there's like few bus drivers who are actually doing some real work.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, there's social, cultural, economical reasons why they have not been able to get the same chances that other people have been having. I don't think it's the specific variable that they're from a specific culture.
Why did we take these people in the first place? That's just drain.
Yeah, well, maybe you should have just thought about taking them in and giving them chances.
So it's our fault we didn't give them chances, is that it? Everything is always our fault.
Yeah, because here in Holland we're trying to give them chances, yeah. And plenty of them are taking it and they're learning the language really quickly.
Well, maybe we should learn from you guys.
Opening stores.
You seem to be doing so well.
I think everyone should be learning from everyone, yeah.
Yeah, they're assholes.
Can I make a point here about Somali refugees? Maybe applies to others like Syrian refugees as well. Is that they're fleeing?
Are they? Somalia is not even a war-torn country anymore. But of course they're not going back because they get free money here. Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Somalia has experienced a huge amount of civil war. Syria obviously has been experiencing a civil war for a long time. These people are basically fleeing their country to try and
you can speak, but this bullshit what you're saying.
Can you let me finish?
Yeah, okay.
Because if you just shout me down, it's not really a conversation, is it?
Go on.
So they're fleeing their countries in a war-torn situation. They're trying to make a better life for themselves wherever. It's not like they go, let's go to Finland, let's go to the UK.
Oh, but that's exactly what they're doing. Otherwise, why don't they stay in Turkey? Okay.
Shall I leave the conversation?
Yeah, please do.
My point is that they're trying to make a better life for themselves, and for them, I don't think they really necessarily want to go and live in Finland where it's very cold, or the UK or Scotland.
They do.
They want to go somewhere where they're going to be safe for a while, so that they can then return to their country when it's more stable.
That's not the reality. They go to holidays back in Somalia. We have a big. The Somalis are the biggest refugee or immigrant group in Finland. They go there for holidays. They definitely don't want to go back live there. They want to live here, not because it's fun, but because they get free money, and the level of lifestyle is much better. Yeah. So you say you give these dreamy ideas about how people want to go back to their countries, but they don't.
Well, the reality of Syria isn't dreamy, is it?
Well, I'm talking about the Somalis because I happen to know about them, right?
I think it's really important that we separate things, because often in this conversation, right?
Let's take to the Somalis.
Talking about getting switched around too much.
The gypsies of Africa.
Me and Sam were having an interesting conversation, and I said Britain has a history of working with other countries and trade, and people go backwards and forwards. And he goes, "Fine, okay, that's Britain. That's Britain's choice. But for Finland, that model doesn't work." So I think it's fair to Sam to not ask him to talk about Dutch immigration policy, right? But let's just focus on Finland specifically.
By the way, I don't think it's working for England or Holland either. But let's stick to Finland.
Well, I would disagree with you, because I'm currently living in a house with a Bangladeshi guy who owns 2 businesses and is a really nice guy. And
okay. I just wanted it on. I just wanted to put it on record so that people don't think that we all agree on this.
I'm on Brick Lane right now. I'm surrounded by Bangladeshi businessmen who are very successful and doing great things for the society and the economy and paying their taxes. So I can talk about Britain as a positive thing. I think I'd be interested to hear specifically about your experience of Finland.
Muslims raping underage girls.
Okay, and that's terrible, and there's no one who supports that. Right.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who let it happen and didn't want to appear racist and all that.
I don't think anyone wants to let any rape happen.
Who lets it happen?
Well, officials, everybody who's a member of this tolerant class, and they are really thank Tommy Robinson for speaking out.
But Sam, what have we seen the last 2 years happen in Hollywood, right? A tolerance class that for a long time was able to rape and sexually harass women, that finally is being shut down. But this is not happening in Islamic culture. This is not happening in Islamic culture. This is happening purely in white Western culture. Same culture that you're part of.
So it's all the same. Isn't that whataboutism?
No, it's women.
Because
I'm trying to say it's not an issue of race or ethnicity. I'm saying it's a human issue.
Oh, but it is. You look at those Rotherham, all those towns in England. They are overwhelmingly 90% Muslims, and they are usually Pakistani. It is about ethnicity, and it is about religion.
What country? What town is that in the
UK? Rotherham, for starters. And there's plenty of others.
90% Muslim.
No, the groomers.
The problem is, right, there are examples like that, and they're terrible. And it has been shown that people didn't help in a way they could have and turned a blind eye. And one of the reasons is because there was this worry that it was perceived as Muslim to target certain people. There is some truth to that story, okay? And it's shocking and it's very unpleasant and we need to learn from it. But likewise, it depends which set of newspapers you're reading, which example they're going to pick. And also, if I read certain newspapers...
Well, you can just look at Wikipedia if you don't trust newspapers. You can look at the numbers. It's the numbers.
The numbers are true, right? But at the same point, which examples are we talking about? If you look at women in finance and how often they're sexually harassed by their bosses, you can say, oh my God, we've got a problem with white men in power. It's a massive problem.
Yeah, sexual harassment at the workplace. It's a bit different than being a 14-year-old being gang raped multiple times. And
that's true, but
I think there's a bit of a difference.
Okay, but if you look at like the Me Too movement, there are a lot of women getting raped and not reporting it, and by white men in power.
Right.
But this is my point. No, because I don't see it as a team sport. We both agree. Fuck those guys who are raping, and fuck those guys who are raping. Yes, we agree. But like.
Yeah.
Well, come on. We don't protect them. We say we want to see blood.
No, we're not saying
hang up Harvey Weinstein. But when you look at those Muslim gang rapists, their community protects them. Their wives.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. When this happened in Germany, the police immediately started an investigation. Mobile footage was confiscated. Absolutely not that people are getting away with it.
So what you had in Germany, you had those molesting things, like 2,000 people. There's 10 people arrested. Yeah. So, but what does that tell you about those people? That culture, where it's like, there's 2,000 dissidents on one day in New York.
Well, actually, the figures pointed out that there were not just migrants doing it. It was just rowdy people in general. Yeah, just rowdy, drunk, annoying people in general. I've known these people. I've been in between these people. Right, and there were just Dutch people as well that do that shit. I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now. I don't think you do either.
You don't need to exact numbers. How about if I say over 90% of the immigrants? Would you agree that that's about the ballpark?
This is hypothetical. I don't have the numbers. You don't have either. I think this was totally misrepresented. But I remember it was misrepresented.
No one has true stories. It's just what facts
you
want
it's hypothetical. Oh, come on. What kind of ballpark would you put it? 50-50?
I don't think it's a Muslim problem.
They are a bit more hands-on than the average person, right?
I'm not really sure that I understand.
But you guys are just saying, you're saying that, the whites do it too, But
I'm not saying that there might not be a bigger problem with migrants, by the way. What I'm saying is that the origin is mostly human, biologically human, partially cultural. But the thing with a multicultural society is that you need to influence people with liberal humanist ideals rather than, I think, segregating societies back again in a sort of tribalism where I take mine and you take yours, but don't come in my neighborhood.
Well, why would I want people who make my neighborhood crappy? Why would I want them in my neighborhood? Just better not
because
let them
I
in
think
at
we're
all,
trying to elevate the entire global society to better standards.
We're trying to make it better than a prison yard. And you said yourself that segregation is bad.
Well, okay, so if you want to elevate the whole humankind, better you move to the third world. You bring your good values there.
We tried in
Don't
Africa and it didn't really work
us.
exactly the way we hoped it, right?
No, but you can go. You don't have to be a conqueror. You can just go as just go live there. Marry a person there and start a business.
I could live here. I can come here.
They would be better. They would be better
legally,
off. Everybody would win.
Learn Dutch and learn a bit about Dutch society. And as long as she's willing, she can take some of her cultural part with her and enrich Dutch society. And that's what we've been doing here for a very long time. And most people here are happy with that. By far, the majority of our country is very happy with that society.
About your wife, I'm sure she's fantastic. But I'm thinking about migration from third world to Europe, from Africa, from Middle East. Most people don't want it. If you look at the Gallups, when people are asked directly, most people
I would agree.
say no.
I would agree that we cannot take the entire third world
problem.
into Europe, right? But we are also partially responsible as Europe for causing certain international situations. And then at that point, you can
take all the responsibility that you want. I'm not taking any.
Crises, right? This is what happened in Africa. This is what's happening in Syria. We've got a humanity crisis there. And we're partially responsible.
So if you feel responsible, then donate money.
You cannot really donate money and solve the situation in Syria, right? Because Syria, I don't know if you've seen it, is being completely shot to pieces. There's no houses to live there anymore.
By the way, it's a small minority of the people coming into Europe that are actually from Syria.
Yeah. So, but we actually wait. We do try to monitor that, and the people that have legitimate reasons, we let them in and we give them some welfare, and the people that do not, we send them back. This is already what is happening.
So there was something you said, Marang, and we tried to pick this apart before. Because of Britain's, military, our involvement in the Gulf War and with Syria and Iraq, we then often feel responsibility to look after the casualties of that war. But I think Sam made a valid point when we were talking before, that, Finland didn't do that. Why is Finland responsible for Britain's wars?
Partially because it entered into the European Union. So I'm sorry to say, but this is part of the reality. This is part of the reality that is there. And Europe as a player
inside the European Union starts to sound really crappy
on
nowadays.
The global market and the global political situation, just like Russia is, just like China is, just like America is, has a role to play. And we had a role to play in Syria. And we're a humane union, maybe more humane,
You're imposing your version. You're imposing your version of what it is to be humane.
I think this is what general agreement is within the European Union or in the European Council at the moment. How about? And this is also the project which
why
is
do you feel the need to impose on other countries your views? Why don't you just Why don't you just say, okay, we are Holland, we are England, we will take all these refugees, and you do what as you wish.
There's no need. There was a pact.
Either way,
first of all, I wasn't the one
you are pro that. You're pro that, and I'm against it.
In certain countries, part of which Holland was one of the founding countries that made this pact.
And
they said we're going to work together. And then wait. A lot of other countries chose to join this project. Right? They were not imposed to join. And just like you see with England, there is an article you can invoke to get out of it.
Imposed. They're putting.
Nothing is imposed. What is imposed is that if you make the choice to join the European Union, it comes with certain responsibilities.
Things against Poland for not wanting Poland and Hungary.
Membership.
Yeah, but why does this have to be a requirement?
Membership has certain requirements.
Why is it other people's business what Poland is doing? That's the question. I'm not asking about. I'm not asking about some agreement or some code in some contract. I'm asking why morally is it your business to tell Polish what?
Because this is the business of the European Union, and the European Union determines how they want to.
So why do you think that your opinion is so much better than the Polish opinion?
Because we have a humane responsibility in the refugee crisis, right? And so all countries, this is what we decided, right? Have you followed the news and how European Union decided on this?
But why do you need to make any pacts anyway? Just take people if you want.
What happens? right? There was a refugee crisis. We decided we need to have some responsibility with this. We make a pact with Turkey as well that they take a lot of responsibility in it. Because the people are coming anyway. You've seen they jump in boats and they'll come.
Yeah.
We try. They try.
Can I ask?
You think it doesn't happen already?
At this point, because I'm interested to know, because we're talking about Finland, right, and refugees. We're talking about the European Union. So it's a question for you, Sam. Finland also suffered, during several wars with, Russia, World War II. There were Finnish refugees during those times, which were taken in by surrounding countries. So how do you feel in the opposite situation when Finnish people were displaced and were refugees and they were taken in by, for example, Sweden and other countries? What's your view on that?
I'll answer that. There were children, small children, people who were like 4 years old, who were a drag, of course, for the total war economy. So many of them went to the tiny children. They went to Sweden, right? And all the men were fighting the war, and all the women were staying in here. Uh-huh. So that, I think it's a very different. And Sweden happily took them so that we could fight the war better. Of course, we are their buffer zone anyway. So it was that's a very different situation than the one in here. And the other one, we lost territory. My grandparents they lost their lands in Karelia, and that was about, I think, 15% of the population that had to move, and they all moved. They moved elsewhere to Finland. So that's one way.
Okay, so Sam,
there's no men running around going around. Hey.
Okay, so Sam, you would prefer the men in Syria to continue fighting with ISIS or with Assad? Which side should they be fighting on?
Well, probably against ISIS. They can figure it out. But it's not their business to come here, or they can try to come.
So we should let kids then, I guess. No?
Yeah.
You would be more sympathetic to kids.
Of course, I would be more sympathetic to kids.
Yeah, my question didn't have any implication. I was just curious to know your opinion on it, because I don't really know much about that situation,
Yeah, so I think that's a fantastic example of what you should be doing. If there's a Soviet Union attacking a small country, take the kids so they can fight. The small country can fight better. They don't have to look after them. Fantastic.
Okay, I think. Should we move on from?
Yeah, I reckon we've kind of covered that, right? Even though we maybe agreed to disagree.
Yeah, sure.
I'd be interested to hear, Sam, your take on Jordan B. Peterson.
Geordie.
Because
Geordie P.
Some people describe him as alt-right, and he's, a thought leader in that space. But then obviously someone like Finn isn't considered right-wing on any definition. So why does he appeal to the right? Is he part of the right? What's the relationship there? Could you help me explain that?
I like him. Unfortunately, I didn't read his book, but I've seen some clips from YouTube about his interviews, and maybe...
Yeah, I'm the same. I've only seen him on YouTube. I haven't got around to reading his book yet. That's why my room is still untidy.
Sort that out, Chris. Tidy your room first before you even read his book.
A clinical psychologist or something to do with psychology anyway.
Yes.
He speaks very clearly. He makes points and arguments very scientific, very easy to understand. And is he alt-right? I think he's just a scientist who says what he thinks. I think he refused to. This was one thing that got him into the media, was that he refused to use some pronoun about transgenders, and
that's not exactly correct. It was compelled speech. He didn't want to be compelled to use the pronoun.
Right. Yeah. I was going to.
If someone else did. Yeah.
Anyway, it was something about that he doesn't. He's not against anything, but he rejects the idea that somebody can force me to use a certain pronoun, or else go to jail. I mean, face criminal charges. Well, that was very logical, and of course it was misrepresented. So anyway, I don't think Jordan Peterson is a particularly political person at all. He's just a scientific guy who says what he thinks, and he refuses to mellow out his opinions or his research for political correctness is very much against that. Yeah.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I'm not really sure that he really counts as alt-right.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think he's a politician. He's not like he doesn't have some agenda or anything like that.
I think it's interesting that his ideas about hierarchy are being used maybe by people in the alt-right. That's maybe one aspect.
He does justify the status quo.
Right. It is very much against feminism, and he talks about how boys should be raised and things like this. And I think that's a important issue in our time when boys are raised by single mothers, the teachers at school are overwhelmingly women, and the whole society is very feminine. And I think that's something that probably appeals to us as well, to the alt-right. I guess I'm alt-right too, and alt-right is like anything from, I don't know, David Duke or whatever to it's such a broad. Pretty much anybody who's not a Tory or who's not a conservative, who thinks Conservative Party is too mellow. But you can have a religious alt-right.
So you would say the alt-right.
So yeah, basically everybody who doesn't fit into the mainstream.
So the alt-right is right of, say, the Republican Party.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, right. From right of the mainstream.
I mean, I think sometimes it's misused, and I hear some people on the left label anyone that doesn't agree with everything they say as alt-right, right?
Yeah, well, right already is a curse word for them. So the ultra-right is it's pretty much a Nazi. Right?
I think it's fascinating that we're agreeing with some of what Sam says. I think it shows that, and that's possible when you don't have things on one continuum of left versus right. And I think it's exactly why people who identify themselves as very left turn off so many people, because once you think in one dimension, the thinking gets very weird. And it gets very much like, well, he thinks that, therefore everyone who agrees with that statement is a Nazi. I've heard that sort of thinking. So why are you right of the Republican Party? What are the Republican Party?
They have given up the culture war totally. The left dominates everything from schools to universities, the church, the media, everything. And they just.
I mean, I've seen Fox News. I'm not sure the right has given up.
Our conservatives are giving in. They're almost indistinguishable.
Could that be because
well, I would say that's because the Democrats are so right wing.
They are economically okay, like economic liberals, right? That
they spend a lot of
socialism as such,
giving it to corporations.
Pretty much, they become like this. That they supposedly are for. They're not for entrepreneurship. They're just like government-backed capitalism, kind of that we give money to our friends and subsidies for businesses and that kind of stuff. They become very corrupt, and they have no like moral high ground about anything. I think they have lost their way. They don't believe in anything anymore. I think I give praise to the left that they believe. Well, many of them, they believe in what they're saying. I think the mainstream conservatives, they have lost any confidence.
They've just sold out to corporate sponsors, right?
It's a very, very interesting take on it.
I mean, for me, the reason why the left, the Republicans and the Democrats are hard to distinguish is because they're both just so corrupt and nepotistic. I do think one thing that'd be interesting is more academic, maybe, but you opened with it, Sam, was the idea of, nationalism versus globalization. And I'm curious, do you think globalization is stoppable? Because it's an unstoppable force, man. The whole world's becoming globalized.
It is not it's not unstoppable force. I think nation state is still the basic unit of everything. So it's unstoppable that people move. I got nothing against people moving when it's free willing. People want to move and the societies want to take them. That's like a nice contract where everybody's happy. I don't have a problem with that.
If your country, if Finland became more liberal and voted to have more immigration, you wouldn't have a problem with that if it was a democratic majority?
Well, they're doing the same stupid stuff that all the rest of you are doing. I don't have any. On the contrary, I think we should be luring in smart people who have skills. Those are very, very useful for our economy. They have already their education and everything, and if they go straight to work, they create jobs. Fantastic. Let's try to get as many as we can. Of course, Finland doesn't attract them. We attract the bad material. The smart ones, they want to go to America or UK or wherever.
We already have systems in place for that.
Of course, about the global, our Scandinavian welfare society is in huge trouble because it doesn't
that's
attract
a different issue, right?
High taxation, high social security. Who does that attract? It doesn't attract people, the best people. It attracts those who want to use the social security.
Let's suppose. I mean, I guess you probably disagree with the hypothetical situation, but let's explore it just to see where it leads. Suppose that nation states don't continue in the way that you maybe hope they will, and in the future, in a more globalized world, we have kind of city states instead. What would you think? What would your opinion be about this situation? Having city states rather than nation states.
City states would be fantastic. Isn't that that's the birthplace of democracy from Greece and everybody? Yeah, there's things about the size of like cities. There's a theory about what's the best size for like a group of people, and it was something like 130 can still function somehow as that everybody know each other. And
yeah, Dunbar's magic number.
The reason why the unit in army is like 8 to 10 people is because that's like the best cohesion and whatever. And yes, city states. That's where like things like Athens back in the day. Those were nicely functioning units. And we can go to higher numbers. What's a good size for a country? Is it like China 1.3 billion, or is it like Estonia 2 million? Estonia can do very quickly many things. They had internet all over the country like this, because small country can be more nimble. It can do a lot of other things smarter than a big country, but then it has some other disadvantages, of course.
So if you look at the modern economy, multiculturalism seems to be winning, seems to be more productive, seems to be more economically viable, a range of ideas. If you look at how most software companies are run, diversity is a strong thing. It makes people smarter, come up with new innovation.
And I think the culture is particularly crappy in Somalia compared to other African countries.
Which shows that it's not racial, it's socioeconomic.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've said clearly that you think people from Somalia are racially inferior and that it's not about socioeconomics. And it doesn't matter if they've been raised in the American education system.
Cultural, yes. Well, and I'm, by the way, when I say they have inferior intelligence, their IQ is lower.
You do not have the proof of that at all.
So could you share your reading with us?
Yeah. I need to quote. This. I can say anything as well, and then pretend it's true, but it's not.
I want to hear what Sam has to say here.
Okay, so I didn't bring some 100 pages of things that I have read.
No, that's okay. None of us bring sources, right, to the fight. But I would be interested to hear, Meringue and Finn, if you leave me to take IQ, I'll leave you guys to take culture. Okay. You know, I'm a background psychology. IQ isn't really respected as a measure of intelligence. Even the founder of the IQ test, Binet, warned that we shouldn't assume any measure of innate intelligence or use it to label individuals. Okay? People from Southern and Eastern Europe used to score a lot lower than people from Western Europe on IQ tests, but that's not the case anymore. As I hinted at earlier, with Eastern Europe becoming the center of the software development world. If you look at changes, so there has been massive changes in the difference between African American IQ and white American IQ since segregation of schools stopped. And that is changing dramatically. So IQ is demonstrably affected by socioeconomic status, and demonstrably doesn't correlate with intelligence.
Why is African America, who are, by the way, about 50% white and 50% black, and they score about 85, which makes sense if the base would be 70 for blacks and 100 for whites. So how come they don't get better?
They are, and I'm happy to show you the studies that show you're wrong. 40 years ago, in certain parts of African American society, there was a difference, but that's entirely understandable given the difference in education. So when you had segregation of schools, right, and then when that segregation ended, what they did was they fired all of the African American teachers. So now you have a bunch of good teachers no longer in the system, and a weird, awkward segregation. Now, if you look statistically, if a black student has one African American teacher, they're 50% or something less likely to get expelled. So there's a massive knock-on effect of these societies.
You clearly done a lot of research, but isn't it the fact that it's still somewhere at 85, and the Asians who definitely didn't have any better resources, they're scoring way over 100, just like you would expect from the
Two things
IQ
I'll say to
test.
that. Number one, no, that 85 isn't right anymore, and it's 40 years outdated. Okay? Number two, when you say Asians, which Asians?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'm talking about Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese.
So as you know from the history of Asia, the people are broadly, there's huge variances within those countries and between those countries. Chinese culture, there's a lot of Chinese in Thai.
You know which Asians I'm talking about. When I say Korea and Japan and
Singapore,
part of China, you know this, and Singapore. But I'm talking about
but you're not,
race,
because Singapore is a mixture of 6 races, and Singapore, the IQ score in the 70s before it developed economically was low, and now it's really high. So there's demonstrable evidence that IQ changes.
Singapore is a very selected who moved to Singapore. All
selection criteria based on economics.
You are distorting this on purpose by taking an example of a city-state which
okay, but let's
Korea
talk about Thailand.
And Japan are very homogenic countries.
Okay, well, let's talk about Thailand, which racially is very Chinese. Like, why haven't they inherited the Chinese IQ?
Thailand and Philippines and all that, they're maybe 90 at best. So their IQ is about 90,
a bit
right?
lower. Because they have problems with the education
and
system.
if you haven't noticed, the upper class in Thailand is very very much Chinese with white skin.
Yes,
you have noticed that, right? Yeah. So it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
I don't understand.
What makes perfect sense? What am I agreeing with there?
Well, that the upper class would be the high. All right. So Japanese, Koreans, and part of China. China is, of course, a million tribes as well, but that part there. So they have a higher IQ than whites, all right? So you asked about Thailand, where the upper class is very China heavy. Bangkok elites, they are quite light-skinned, white-skinned.
I didn't understand that at all. They have white skin, therefore their IQ goes up.
What's
the
the
point
problem?
is that anytime you can show wealth and growing opportunity, IQ goes up. And don't conflate that with race. Like I say, look at Eastern Europe.
No. So how about you? Okay, so Saudi Arabia should be doing fantastically.
And I bet the rich classes in Saudi Arabia do have high IQs, and I bet they go to very good schools.
Saudi Arabia does not have a high IQ. It's somewhere there with the other Arabs. So
and do you know?
They should be like 105.
The studies have been quite clear on this. The studies have been quite clear on this, even with.
So do you know the reason some of these countries have low IQ scores is because they don't have a very divided society between rich and poor, and they're not looking after poor people with good schools, which shows that a lot of the left's policies would help.
But Saudi Arabia is a very Saudi Arabia has schools for all the Saudi Arabians. I mean, they share the wealth of the oil money quite liberally with everybody who's a citizen, of course, not to the guest workers. So my point is, I mean, do you guys deny that there's differences in like meaningful big differences in IQ between races and ethnicities? So you deny that?
IQ mostly correlates with years spent in a good Western school. That's it.
Personally, Personally, I agree with Chris that IQ is not a particularly useful measure of intelligence. Intelligence has maybe 4 or 5 different facets, right? IQ testing people on a certain type of reasoning. I think that certain type of reasoning is not really.
Sure. So that's true. There's emotional intelligence, and there's musical intelligence. Okay, fine. But I'm thinking about this particular, which is like mathematic, linguistic, that kind of intelligence. Which, by the way, is a very good. The people who study IQ and people who study genes, people's genes have much. It's the nurture against nature. It's nowadays it's like 70% or more nature than nurture. Assuming that you don't have like absolute power.
Absolutely not. The research absolutely does not say that nature is more important than nurture. Absolutely not.
No one has been debating nature versus nurture for 50 years. It's a false dichotomy.
It's actually research is showing it's more nurture than nature.
It does.
So,
but I mean that's the. I'm saying that it's been like if it's 50-50 or whatever, and
this is what my study was, so I'm actually pretty sure it is.
Well, I don't think so. What was your study? I bet it was humanistics.
Yeah, it was.
No kidding.
But the research is still there.
Humanistic studies show that humanistics is more important.
Why don't you read Yuval Noah Harari's book? Right, historian, one of the more popular historians.
I read like half of it. I skipped through it because it was like a children's book. It was so.
Ding, ding, ding.
I read pretty much all of it already before. I see people. Oh wow, what a fantastic book! Okay.
I'm ringing the logical fallacy bell. Ding, ding, ding.
No, of course it's a summary. It's a summary of a lot we already know.
Yeah, he was lying about IQ in that book.
I'd like to say, Sam, I think most of the studies you're quoting are from a book called The Bell Curve. Right?
Bell curve, it's yes.
Now, honestly, anyone that looks it up, it's widely refuted. It's not considered scientific.
So anyway, it's not only from that. Anyway, that's just like you saying things. I've read, I don't know, 1,000 pages about this. I don't remember which comes from where, and I know for sure that you guys haven't done your research, so we just.
Okay, Sam, but you do accept, right? Let's say you believe that in my research, right, the difference between African American and white American IQs has gotten a lot smaller than it's implied it is in the bell curve. Can you accept
I'm sure that's gone a bit smaller. I don't know if it's gone a lot smaller.
That's a significant amount.
So what's the difference now? Is it 1 standard deviation difference still?
No, it's less.
How much is the difference?
I think you're talking about 5 to 8 points now.
Is that you have checked it out? Because I hear all the time you guys quoting all that stuff that isn't true. But if you say so, I can believe it.
I mean, again, this isn't a hint to what I said before. I don't want to live in a society where everyone has the same brain. I think diversity of thought is good. I think diversity.
Yeah, I don't even understand why the IQ argument matters, because Asians have a higher IQ than white people. So should white people die in the favor of Asian people now? I don't think you have to precise proof. How ethnic genicity plays a role in intelligence. You're taking socio-economical and cultural factors, and you're presenting them as genetic or racial proof.
This is a fact. What can I say?
You have an observation, that's all. But your reasoning behind what's causing this observation, you do not have.
Just go to Wikipedia for starters, if that's a trusted.
I've told you, Sam. It's a cherry-picked fact from an old book.
Yeah.
No.
If I don't accept your studies, I can't talk to you.
But I have actually spent. I have spent hours and hours researching and looking into this, and I bet you guys haven't. Maybe Christopher has, but
this is the problem with the truth, right? It's really hard to talk where there are two sets of facts, where there are two sets of truths.
Yeah, well, this is a podcast. This is a podcast where we're talking, so it's not really my fault that I can't.
So you do have to do your research. Yes, if you want a very strong opinion.
How do I know your research is peer reviewed?
So that's why we need to just disagree.
Right? You can say you do your research, but how do I know it's scientifically peer reviewed? So you're accusing me of not having done my research, but I don't even know what research you're talking about. If this is peer reviewed research, Chris has done research. Chris has done research in peer reviewed studies, and So I accept at this point, Chris, his argument about IQ.
It doesn't mean anything that Christopher has Googled some nice. But this is such.
Guys, look, we can share links afterwards. And the main point, look, I've done a good amount of research, which is why I was able to know which book you were quoting from. Okay, so I've done my homework. As I say, we can all just assume that we're acting in good faith and our sources are correct, and we can share them afterwards. Okay, I'm pretty sure, because I have looked into this, Sam, that some of what you're looking at is outdated, and the picture changes a lot based on education and based on socioeconomic factors. And are you willing to accept that?
Are Ashkenazi Jews, do they have a clearly much higher IQ than Aboriginals? Genetically.
I concede that people are different. I'm okay with that.
I think there's historical factors. Well, I think that if you put an Ashkenazi Jew in an Aboriginal territory and tell them to survive, then I think they're going to have a very hard time. So I think Aborigines have adapted to their circumstances, right? If you take an Aboriginal, you give a few generations education. So not just the one generation, but the parents and the children. So the parents can raise the children with their education. And then by some point, you have someone with an IQ and that can study and that can actually work in Silicon Valley, which you said that Somali couldn't do.
Are they or are they not?
I don't think it's meaningful.
That's not an answer. That's not an answer.
I have to. I think Moraine answered and Chris answered. My opinion, I would question the value of intelligence as determining worth.
I asked about the IQ.
Are there? Your question is. Are there differences between?
So you agree that they have genetically higher IQ? You agree with that?
You're comparing two entirely different type of thinking and intelligence, right? This is entirely different worldviews and entirely different cultural views.
Genetically, that was the question.
If you give an Asiatic Jew a test from Aboriginal culture, they would fail as well, right?
I guess everybody agrees that they have higher IQ, but it's genetic.
So cultures take time to adapt, for sure. Do I disagree with you that or no?
So
I don't.
Do they or do they not?
No, I disagree that genetics puts a hard limit on that. I think genetics works a lot more freely than you think it does.
I want to. The reason I'm asking, I want to.
Okay, I think the phenotype expressions of the genetic, of the genes
again,
that
I think we're getting to the nature versus nurture, which is just so basic, guys. Come on.
Can I interject?
You seem like the smarter Dutch anyway.
I'm only half Dutch. I'm half Norwegian.
Okay, well that makes sense.
Bit of ad hominem there. Nice.
There's a continuum there with your English.
But I was raised in England.
Christopher Hitchens on the other side. Yeah.
I was raised in England, but anyway, I would say that the point of this podcast is the name itself is beyond binary, right? So to kind of force ourselves down this narrow path of do you accept or not, I think this is the point that we're trying to explore in the podcast. It's not necessarily that is it a yes or no question. We're trying to look for explanations, other avenues, this kind of thing. So I like the debate and the discussion. I've really enjoyed it, listening in. Personally, I'm not so much of a fan of that, but I would say that maybe there are different reasons. I think we've explored that really well, the distinctions between I think we've explored really well the distinctions between how is IQ related to nature and nurture, and really that's what the question comes down to, right? You're saying that genetics and nature are more important. Moraine, for example, thinks that education and nurture is more important, and Chris has pointed out that IQ is perhaps not the best measure of intelligence. So my opinion would be somewhere in the middle of all of those three. I can't really give you a yes or no answer.
I think that's an excellent opportunity to move on. I'd like to talk about some areas of news and like current affairs that are going on, and I'd like to sort of ask Sam's opinion on it, because although I agree with a lot of what Moraine says, and I like that he argues very passionately, it's rare that we get an opportunity to talk to someone like Sam and hear their views quite openly and honestly. So I'd like to encourage him and hear more
I'd
from
love
him,
to do that.
even if we disagree with him. I'd just take the opportunity for what it is and find out a bit more from his perspective, if that's okay. I mean, but do you support free speech? Are you an absolutist? Do you think hate speech should be allowed?
But it's very hard to be absolutist about just the right to free speech. Right, you cannot be absolutist about it, which is with a lot of things. You cannot be entirely absolutist about it. You have to explore the gray zone. You have to explore beyond the binary. You have to explore the gray zone. You have to set certain contextual limits. And maybe sometimes it's drawn well and sometimes it's not drawn well. And it's a process where we improve ourselves, I think. But I think to be very absolutist about free speech is very dangerous territory. Right, the right is shutting the left down. The right is believing in certain news reports that are not correct, and this is actually happening in Brazil. Have you seen the news reports from Brazil? People being attacked for having a left-wing opinion. People being assaulted on the streets.
One thing I would ask about is, aren't the Proud Boys involved in attacking liberals? I've seen a few videos of people punching each other.
Defending. Yeah, exactly. Look at that. Never.
The norm may be different in Finland than it is here in the Netherlands.
Okay.
I think young groups of angry men who get political and fights happen in all countries on all sides. That's the norm. Probably a bit of both. Normally, most protests, there's counter-protests.
No,
most protests, there are counter-protests, man.
But it's the same for you as well. Which group do you belong to?
Changes their mind.
It's a funny thing because I think they're very similar to right-wing groups, right? For both of them, identity politics is very important. Both of them shout the other one down. Both of them claim to have the only access to the sole source of truth. Both of them are scared of each other. Both of them think the other one is a threat, right?
Also, is Antifa, that was a credible threat. I think socialism always been a threat. I mean, in Finland it has been a real threat. Yeah, there are a lot of people who are very openly, they want a socialist revolution.
Define socialism, though, because I like Bernie Sanders, let's arrest some bankers and stop economic crashes from happening again. I like that.
So, you guys are right. I mean, about that the left and the right are in many ways similar. Of course, we the populist alt-right or whatever you want to call, we also want to punish the elite a little bit and take back some of the unearned monies and
right.
So everybody is a bit against bankers. I think who is losing is the middle, the mainstream, the guys in the middle. They're the ones who are losing. So people are moving. They're moving more to the extreme in left.
Sam, why don't we focus less on identity politics and start going for the bankers and the economy?
Well, I didn't start
and the ruling elite, because I agree
politics.
with you. I think it's the bread and games tactics, right? It's what the Romans did as well. The ruling elite riles everyone up, and it's left versus right, and it is Antifa versus Nazism and fascism, and it's what we're not focusing on is the fact that after the big worldwide economic crisis, the banks are doing exactly the same again, and the next economic crisis is right in front of us.
That's a bad thing, but I want to tell you what's the worst thing. First thing that we will never recover from is the changing of the population in Europe. So that will only change. The civil war is the only way to get rid of it. Of course.
So you're saying the population is a bigger issue than the global economy?
A nation, they can survive war, they can survive anything, but they cannot survive changing of their population. And that's what's happening in Europe. We have low birth rates, and we got Africans and Middle Easterns, Muslims coming in, making lots of babies. So at this rate, we will become.
Well, Chris, start making white babies.
Well, I don't need to. I only need to stop them from coming. I don't mind if Finland has 4 million people. That's fine.
There's so many examples where you're wrong, though, Sam.
Yes. Oh, the economy is doing fantastically now.
Look at America. America's the most culturally diverse
country
of many. And honestly, their economy kicks ass.
When we say
The economy's doing fantastically for over 100 years.
Right, and they were all Europeans before. They had a superior. They had superior ideology.
Because they're like Finland.
USA had a superior ideology.
They had all sorts of different people with different
their mentality, which is fantastic. I don't know what makes American, but that mindset is
for the
great.
Africans, which you conveniently
I think they also, but probably like the people who took the journey, who took the chance, they risked it all. They are the kind of people who can make things happen. That was, by the way, when you mentioned Singapore. So people who went to Singapore, they were probably not your average people.
There's a lot of Malaysians in Singapore who were originally basically in that land.
So do you think some of the immigrants coming to Europe now might be some of the bravest and most entrepreneurial and adventurous and...
They might be, sure. That would make sense.
Okay, so we all agree on immigration then. Europe needs more. Brilliant.
There's still a big problem for countries like Finland with high unemployment because they don't have skills. And they have
Can I ask you a question,
values.
Sam, Can I ask you a question about that? Because we all talked about the kind of elite and bankers, and then that kind of leads to the question of redistribution of wealth. And we had an episode 3 was about universal basic income. So my question is, what's your opinion on redistributing wealth? Say if these bankers are and big corporations who are dodging tax, let's imagine that they're like caught red-handed and there's a bunch of money that came from the elites. And
what do you mean red-handed? Like they made a crime?
What redistribution method would you imply? Would you prefer with that money?
Okay, so we would have all this money. What to do with it? Well, okay, we could just pay up debt. So much debt that I don't see us ever confiscating more than we are. So we should lower our debt. I don't think we should start distributing and sharing it. Just pay up debt. So instead of having 100 billion in debt, we would have 50 billion in debt. So that's good for everybody too. It's just a different method.
So you'd be against any kind of.
But okay, if all right, fine. If we had this lump sum, I guess it would be fun to give everybody 1,000 euros or something. But that I think in economics, it's just it's.
So you prefer
inflation
quantitative
rises
easing
and all kinds of bad stuff happens if you just like write everybody a check all of a sudden. Maybe not the best way to distribute, but I definitely wouldn't want to make the welfare state any bigger. So that's my point. I wouldn't start, okay, let's have these more benefits to people and all that. I wouldn't want that. I would want lower taxes. In Finland, we have one of the highest taxes in the world. Work especially is taxed a lot, so it's often not worthwhile doing much. So I would spend it on those things.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Sam. Guys, I have one final question, which I think will just sort of end things off nicely. So before I do that, does anyone have anything else they want to say?
No, I think it's really it's really interesting conversation, and thanks, Sam, for joining us.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, Sam, was the debate that the left seems to have over whether it's okay to punch a Nazi. And I think that's relevant to what we did today. The conversation got heated, at some points actively confrontational, but at all points I felt it was mostly respectful. So thank you for that. And I'd be interested to hear whether you think conversations like this sort of help, whether you think punching a Nazi ever helps, and what do you think about that debate?
Well, we could just as well ask if punching a traitor or punching a communist is great. So you were probably not like that very much because you could imagine someone, for example, me considering you a traitor or a communist, whether you won or not.
Do we agree, Sam, that it's not good to hit anyone then? Because
well, you asked me if it's good to hit the Nazi. Of course not, because the Nazi will hit you back. So,
but is that the reason why it's not good to hit a Nazi? Because they'll hit you back.
Oh, okay. Is it? Let's say you can hit a Nazi, but you won't. Or is this an academic question? Or is it,
no, I was just wondering because, like, I don't think it's good to punch a Nazi, but I don't think it's good to punch a communist either. And I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just because nobody ever asked, is it good to? I know this punch a Nazi thing, and that was so big with the left. And there's a reaction to your actions.
Okay. Yes, and I would say the same for...
Probably best to stay civil and hope the other ones stay civil too. But if they don't, then at some point you gotta... I didn't have identity politics before, but at some point, when everybody else gangs up, you will gang up too. And that's what happened in America with Trump winning. Everybody's, we are black and proud, we are blah, blah, blah. And so, all right, so I guess I'm a white man. So that's my identity then. So, yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think we have time to get into Black Lives Matter, do we?
Keep it civil, but, also at some point you have to fight back as well.
But then you come to the point where it's okay to hit a Nazi. Because if you need to fight back, then the other group can fight back as well, right? So the left argues in this case that they're right to punch a Nazi because the Nazi's gone too far, according to them. And if you're saying a communist goes too far, and that's why we're now allowed to fight back, when all they were using words.
That's how things escalate, but you can't just be taking punches all the time either. Who's the instigator? Who's the one who's
instigating the fighting?
I don't think you can
ever know because the instigation happened long time ago. No, it's years of abuse cycles, right? Cycles of abuse, just reinforcing them into time and time again. So you either break through it and you just try to use words to find the middle somewhere, or you punch the Nazi or the communist, whatever it is you want to punch.
Sure. I know what you're saying. Try to avoid a vendetta or things like try to make things not escalate. But that's all right. There's a time and place for that, but there's also a time and place where you just have to
punch the Nazi.
Fight. Oh, well, punch the traitor. Yeah. I mean, that's where it's going. It's going towards civil war.
It's the left uses exactly the same arguments that you're using.
That's why punch a Nazi is a thing. Punch a traitor is not a thing. Punch a communist is not a thing. I just said it so you would understand that it can go the other way as well. So the answer to the question is it okay to punch a Nazi?
Because you're feeling it goes to a civil war.
The left is way bigger and stronger than the right. Okay, so there's no chance of right-wingers like me going around fucking brown shirts and dead squads going around punching communists. We're like one against 50.
There's not a lot of communists.
So it's not really a problem. Nazis punching people on the streets.
It definitely does. It definitely does happen.
But
in Brazil it happens.
Every once in a while. Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Well, maybe in Dresden or Brazil. Okay, so then that's a different thing there, but it's certainly not happening.
So then it's more a majority versus minority abuse thing than it is anything to do with left, right, racial, cultural.
My thing is that I would have a numerical advantage and then go to punch the little guys. It's not manly. It's not manly at all.
I don't think it's manly to punch anyone.
I'm not into it, and I think it's very much against the ethos or credo of the right wing that it's just biggest reason not to do it is because it's just lame and not manly. But I don't think I know it doesn't sound like a good reason, but I think that's really like.
Yeah, I kind of want to disagree, but I think like if you have if you have reasons to not be violent, I don't think it's so important what the reasons are. It could be it's not manly or it's womanly. It could be anything. But I think like if we tried not to be violent and engage in discussion, then that's the best outcome.
Right. Well, of course, this doesn't stop the soy boys and the liberals from attacking as their mob. They always like to go like
soy division.
Soy division, yeah. The vegan post-punk band.
Soy division.
I think one thing I would disagree with you on, Sam. You said things are getting worse, and it's almost like a civil war is inevitable.
I'm not saying worse, I guess, but the mainstream is definitely losing votes to both left and right. That's observable.
Sure, but if you look at the way media is shifting, the mainstream's losing power in general. People don't buy newspapers anymore,
as they should.
Right? There's more YouTube channels, there's more podcasts, there's more alternate forms of media. So
that's great. I love it too.
Yeah. So
less power for the Lügenpresse.
Well, and also I think there are more and more conversations like this happening, which are hopefully better than anyone punching anyone. As I say, even though we disagreed quite heatedly at times, I do really appreciate your time.
I'm not so happy about this because we were talking about things that are just facts that we disagree about. So it doesn't really matter what my opinion, like we're talking about intelligence, it doesn't really matter what my opinion is. But what matters, I think what matters is what
But the conversation is important.
Because
then our listeners can go and investigate for themselves about IQ and about immigration and Somalians.
I wasn't able to give any good readings or read this or look.
But that's fine. I think I really appreciate you coming on here and giving those opinions, and we discuss it, and then it's up to the listeners what they want to do with that information. They can agree with you, or they can go and look into it themselves and do their own research.
Sure. But I would at least also. I guess this is an obvious thing, but just that those things shouldn't be a matter of opinion. It's kind of climate change. Oh, in my opinion, it's not happening. Well, doesn't really matter what your opinion is, right? That's it. It either is or it isn't. So that
I'd like to think that our viewers have the same opinion. That they know the difference between fact and opinion, and they can reason that themselves, and they can investigate.
It is concerning though that there are more and more on issues two sets of facts that run opposite to each other. It is a big issue, right? I think what I'd like to do is encourage Sam to change. Like, if you share when you've had more time, share the books and reading on the Facebook page, and then people can see your facts as you have time to present them.
I mean, I debated this with smart people online with all kinds of articles and everything. People don't change their mind very easily, anyways. But they can be persuaded to some extent. Yeah. Anyway.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much for your time, Sam.
Yes, thanks, Sam.
All right, thank you. Thanks. All right.
From London, I'm Chris.
From Helsinki, I'm Sam.
From Amsterdam, Marijn.
And from Cordoba, I'm Finn. And I'll just finish with one of my favourite quotes is, if you can't change your mind, you're not using it.
That's a nice short one.
Yeah, that's good.
Kusunum, Sam. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kusunum.
Yeah, if you can send me that recording, Sam, I'll edit it down. I won't obviously edit you to sound weird or wrong. That's not my intention here. But I'll send it over to everyone for review before we publish.
All right.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks for your time, dude. Take it easy.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Enjoy your game.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.